When we talk about the absolute pinnacle of global sports, there is really only one answer. What we're about to explore today isn't just some dry timeline of athletic events. We are diving into an epic, century-long saga. I want you to close your eyes for just a second and imagine that visceral feeling of the tournament, the totally deafening roar of 80,000 fans packed into a monumental stadium, a massive sea of painted faces, the vibrant, chaotic clash of national colors under those blinding stadium lights. We're talking about the complete story of the FIFA World Cup, spanning all the way from its incredibly fragile beginnings back in 1930 to the completely unprecedented scale of the upcoming 2026 tournament. This is a story of profound hope, agonizing heartbreak, raw human emotion, and authentic historical moments that have brought our entire planet together like absolutely nothing else.
Every 4 years, billions of people stop what they're doing. Think about the sheer scale of that for a second. It's actually kind of hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? When this tournament kicks off, sprawling global megacities quite literally fall silent. Traffic just disappears. Families in every single corner of the globe gather tightly around their TVs and radios. Entire nations dare to dream, basically holding their collective breath with every single pass. It's this ultimate stage where mortal men are transformed into heroes, and where legends are permanently etched into the history books. But it begs a truly fascinating question. How exactly did a simple football tournament become the undisputed greatest sporting event on Earth?
So, where did this all begin? Let's jump right into part 1, Birth of a Global Dream, the origin story.
It all started with one incredibly ambitious guy, a visionary named Jules Rimet. Now, in the early 20th century, football was already growing rapidly across the world, but there was a massive missing piece. There was no single global competition to actually crown the best football nation. Rimet looked at a totally fractured world and fiercely believed that football could unite countries through sport. So, after years of meticulous, exhausting planning, FIFA organized the first ever World Cup in 1930, hosted down in Uruguay. But only 13 teams participated. You've got to remember, the reality of 1930 was harsh. European teams had to endure these grueling, weeks-long transatlantic voyages on passenger ships just to reach South America. Yet, despite the sheer physical toll, history was made when Uruguay defeated Argentina 4-2 to claim that very first crown. The tournament then moved to Italy in 1934 and France in 1938 as the global appetite for the game swelled. But then, tragedy struck. World War II erupted. The 1942 and 1946 World Cups were abruptly canceled. For 12 long, devastating years, the stadium sat empty, and a lot of people legitimately feared the tournament would never, ever return. 200,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering, completely unprecedented number of passionate fans who packed into the towering Maracanã Stadium when the World Cup miraculously survived and returned to Brazil in 1950. The scale was just unimaginable. The noise was deafening. Brazil only needed a simple draw against Uruguay to become the undisputed champions on their home soil. The crowd was totally ready for a coronation. But instead, the world witnessed one of the absolute greatest shocks in the history of sports. Uruguay stunned that massive crowd, defeating Brazil 2-1. When that final whistle blew, a haunting, pin-drop silence fell over those 200,000 people. It became known as the Maracanazo, this massive national trauma for Brazil, and honestly, one of football's most heartbreaking, historically resonant moments.
Moving right along to part 2, the era of legends. This is where we meet football's first global superstars. Out of the shadows of war and basic survival, the 1950s and 60s saw the tournament truly come of age. Picture this, it's 1958, we're in Sweden, and out of nowhere steps this totally unknown 17-year-old kid named Pele. The world had quite literally never seen anything like him. He played with this mesmerizing style known as ginga, a rhythmic, acrobatic flair just full of joyous creativity that rigid European defenders simply could not comprehend. His boundless skill drove Brazil to their very first World Cup victory. Fast forward through his totally cinematic career, and that young boy's legacy culminated in a staggering record of 3 World Cup victories, a record that incredibly still stands today. Pele's breathtaking brilliance single-handedly cemented Brazil as football's very first global powerhouse.
But look, Pele definitely wasn't alone in this golden age. We're talking about a literal pantheon of immortals who emerged, turning the pitch into a stage for the extraordinary. There was Garrincha, the angel with bent legs who dribbled with an impossible chaotic joy that left defenders constantly tangled in their own feet. Eusebio, the Black Panther of Portugal, tearing through defensive lines with lethal, unstoppable power. Johan Cruyff, the Dutch visionary who revolutionized the very geometry of the pitch with total football. This fluid, tactical masterpiece where players seamlessly interchanged roles, completely bewildering their opponents.
And then, of course, Franz Beckenbauer, the Kaiser, commanding the field with absolute aristocratic grace for West Germany. The World Cup was no longer just a tournament you tried to win. It was actively becoming a stage for immortality.
Fast forward to Mexico in 1970 and boom, everything changes again. The World Cup was broadcast in color for the very first time. Suddenly, millions of fans sitting in their living rooms didn't just read about Brazil in the morning papers, they vividly witnessed those searing, vibrant yellow shirts blazing across emerald green pitches. They watched in high-fidelity color as a team many consider the greatest in football history, led by Pele, played impossibly beautiful attacking football. This brilliant technological milestone completely altered the visual aesthetic of the sport, searing these cinematic images right into the global consciousness.
All right, on to part 3, a worldwide phenomenon. This marks the shift into a global business and eternal legends. As we roll through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the tournament was transforming from just a popular sport into a colossal global business, totally defined by exploding television audiences and massive sponsorships. But amidst all that rapid corporate growth, the soul of the game was still all about raw, unbridled individual brilliance. In 1986, Diego Maradona, Argentina's fiercely passionate captain, delivered what is arguably the greatest individual performance ever captured on film. In a single mythic match against England, he gave the world the infamous, highly controversial trickery of the unpunished hand of God. And then, mere minutes later, he embarked on this dazzling, midfield-spanning run, weaving past half the English team to score the breathtaking goal of the century. Maradona practically dragged Argentina to glory, making 1986 arguably the most iconic World Cup ever played. And the tournament's footprint was just exploding across the map, reaching every corner of the globe. In 1998, an incredibly diverse, dynamic French squad achieved unprecedented glory on home soil in Paris, completely uniting their nation. Just 4 years later, the World Cup broke spectacular new ground, arriving in Asia for the very first time, as South Korea and Japan co-hosted a visually stunning tournament where Brazil secured a record 5th championship. Then came 2010, a monumental milestone. Football officially arrived in Africa. South Africa hosted this joyous, vibrant, unforgettable festival defined by the relentless buzzing soundtrack of the vuvuzelas, culminating in Spain finally lifting the trophy with their absolutely mesmerizing passing game. Which brings us to a modern era we all know so well. Part 4, the ultimate final, and the Messi and Ronaldo era. For nearly 2 decades, a brand new generation arrived and completely captivated us. Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, 2 unyielding titans who relentlessly dominated club football, breaking literally every record imaginable. The entire world waited with bated breath to see if either of them could ultimately claim football's greatest, most elusive prize. But actually, before we found our modern champion, the world experienced a moment of sheer, unadulterated disbelief. 7-1. Yeah, 7-1. In 2014, with the tournament proudly back in Brazil, Germany delivered a merciless, surgically precise tactical dismantling of the host nation in the semifinal. It was a brutal, historic anomaly, a scoreline that absolutely nobody on earth expected, leaving the footballing world completely speechless and an entire nation in tears. And that sets the stage for 2022, the very first tournament ever held in the Middle East. Hosted by Qatar, it was this massive historic shift in location and climate, played in the winter months inside state-of-the-art air-conditioned stadiums. It provided a completely unprecedented backdrop, setting the stage for a climax that felt like it was perfectly scripted by a Hollywood writer. It was the stage for what many now universally consider to be the absolute greatest final in the long, storied history of football. Argentina versus France. Lionel Messi versus Kylian Mbappe. The beloved veteran, desperately chasing his ultimate destiny in his final World Cup, going toe-to-toe against the young, explosive superstar looking to defend his crown and cement a brand new dynasty. The drama was, no joke, pure cinema. We witnessed breathtaking volleys, furious comebacks, a miraculous last-minute kick save by Argentina's Emi Martinez that seemed to literally stop time itself, grueling extra time, and the unbearable, suffocating tension of penalty kicks. When the dust finally settled, Argentina emerged victorious. Lionel Messi finally lifted the golden trophy, bathed in stadium lights, and watched by billions. It was the ultimate missing piece of his legendary career, a moment of pure sporting perfection that will live absolutely forever. So, what is next? Let's look at Part 5, the biggest tournament yet, the historic 2026 World Cup.
When you compare the numbers over the last century, it perfectly paints the picture of how far we've come. Back in 1930, Jules Rimet's fragile dream started with just 13 teams navigating complex, exhausting boat journeys just to show up. Fast forward to 2026, and a staggering 48 nations are going to fiercely compete. The World Cup has transformed from this small, ambitious gathering into a sprawling, month-long global festival involving nearly every single nation on Earth. It is an evolution of scale and reach that is completely unmatched in human history. And it's not just the team count that's getting bigger. For the very first time ever, 3 distinct countries are uniting to host the tournament together: the United States, Canada, and Mexico. This unprecedented continental scale means massive, state-of-the-art stadiums, an exponentially higher number of matches, millions more roaring fans traveling across borders, and an entirely new chapter of history waiting to boldly unfold across North America. Somewhere, a child is dreaming, a nation is believing, and football history is waiting to be written. You know, the FIFA World Cup is so much more than just a game of football played on a pitch. It is hope. It is fierce national pride. It's the shared history of humanity, crossing languages, cultures, and borders to unite us in 90-minute intervals of pure magic. Every 4 years, we gather to witness the impossible, to cry, to celebrate, and to dream together. So as we look toward 2026 and beyond, I just have to ask you, who will step up under the brightest lights to write the next legendary chapter in the greatest story ever told?